Hello, YouTube land. This is Brenton Sawin coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. Today I have a lady whose name is Jill, and she is going to share some Bigfoot and Dogman stories that are quite interesting. I believe that you all will like this show. If anyone out there has some Bigfoot, Dogman, any type of cryptid story, supernatural, paranormal type stories that you think would be interesting and would make a good show, you can contact me at brentonson@gmail.com. This is part 2 of the interview with Jill from Florida.
I have another little incident that happened where there was a whole bunch of us out in my yard, and we never even knew there was one there. But one lady happened to look over where it was standing watching us and saw it, and then it left. But now this is odd because we had dogs, lots of dogs. I had my two. There was another dog that we sort of adopted because somebody dropped him off and abandoned him, so we kept him. He was an older dog. And then there was this other lady, and she had two of her own and one that she was trying to she was trying to keep so that she could readopt him out, but he needed some work. So that's 3, 4, 6 dogs that we had on the property at the time, and not one of them knew this thing was there. And that's
Wow.
extremely, extremely unusual, too. And there was about 6 adults and 3 children. And we had been on this piece of property I bought, and there was a lot of activity on this property that more so than I thought there was at the time, just in hindsight, thinking of all the different things that happened. There was quite a bit of stuff that happened. It was in a little rural community, and there was some people that lived there, but it was sort of sparse. It was close to a small little town. There was a post office, an elementary school, a couple of, there was a car lot, and there was a convenience store and a couple other communities. And I just gotten this piece of property that was sort of wedged in between 2 empty acres. So I had 1 acre, and the acre closest to the road was empty and owned by somebody else. And then there was an acre right behind me. And then further back beyond that, there was a few people here and there. Well, there was a big old field that was adjacent to my property, big old field that had remained vacant for a long time. And they were getting ready to put in a subdivision across there. And I just bought the property without foreknowledge of knowing that.
Right.
So, we were staying on the property, and it had been vacant since the 70s. The owner lived somewhere else. He moved away, and it had an old house that was grandfathered in, and the roof had pretty much fallen in, no doors on it. It was mainly just a hull. It was a structure, a cement structure. So my thought was to, rebuild the house. It was grandfathered in because it was the original structure. So long as you use the original structure, you can build your house. So I was going to, do that. But in the meantime, I had an RV. We moved onto the property and lived in the RV, got the pumping well and everything up and running. And the very first night that we stayed there, it was just my daughter and I at the time. My fiance at that time, we were having some problems, so he lived somewhere else, and she and I were there. The first morning we wake up in this RV on the property, and you know how RVs have little curtains in the front windows that you can pull to for privacy?
Yeah.
And you have windows all around. So we had all of our windows drawn, and I felt safe out there, even though it was it kind of gave me a weird feeling when I first went to look at the property, but I was bound and determined to ignore it, figuring it was just my own fears.
Yeah.
But now in hindsight, I'm not so sure. So my daughter, and at this time, she was 5 years old. I don't think she'd turned 6 yet. So she pulled to the little curtains on the front windows facing the empty acre behind us. And she said that she looked out the window and something roared at her from the trees. And it scared her so bad. She didn't know what it was, but it echoed and it shook the whole entire RV. I was in that stage just before being conscious, but I was not asleep. You know, that
right.
kind of that
yeah.
REM or whatever that is stage. And I recall the RV shaking, but
right.
then my mind, I thought it was my daughter because she started running down the hall and yelling, "Mommy, mommy, 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 mommy." And then I thought she was the one shaking the RV, and she was panicking. And she said, "Mommy, there's a T-Rex outside." And she had no knowledge of any cryptids. I protected her as much as possible. You know, I didn't want her to know about them because of the problems I had as a kid. And she had, in her school, they had done like a little dinosaur dig, teaching them about paleontology. So she knew what a T-Rex was, but she'd never heard of a Bigfoot or a Skunk Ape or any of that. So in her mind, the only thing that could connect to what that growl and that roar came from was a T-Rex.
Right.
And it was scary. It was scary to her. So she was panicking, and I woke up and I was trying to tell her there is no T-Rexes. They don't exist anymore. They're extinct. And she kept arguing that something roared at her. It had to have been a T-Rex. It shook. Didn't you feel the RV shake? And I said, "But that was you." And she said, "No, it wasn't." So that was the beginning of that. And that was about 8 o'clock in the morning. So it was daylight already. And then there was all sorts of things. My brother and his girlfriend at the time ended up coming to stay out there too, but they lived in a tent. And the idea was we were all going to work on this house. Yeah. And they lived in a tent on the property while I lived in my RV, and it was an acre. It was a full acre. And at night, they would hear things in the trees. They would hear sounds that sounded like monkey chatter, loud monkey chatter. They said they heard weird birds that didn't sound normal, and I heard them too. And they kept asking me, "What kind of bird is that? What kind of bird is that?" Because I had studied, I had a certificate in forestry and wildlife management. So I had studied species of animals, and I had no clue what it was. It didn't sound like any bird I'd ever heard before. It was deep, and it just sounded very off.
Right.
And so, fast forward a couple of months, they started bulldozing that lot across the field. It wasn't a lot. It was several acres, and it was owned by a company that I'm not going to mention. But they started bulldozing all that land to be able to put together this subdivision. And they would leave their big, heavy equipment overnight. You know, they leave it where it is, and they resume working in the morning when the crew shows up. So overnight, you could hear these loud banging noises, and it sounded like something was having a temper tantrum. It was throwing a fit, hitting the heavy equipment, trying to destroy the heavy equipment.
Wow.
And I would love to have heard. I don't know if it actually succeeded or if that's what it was, but it seemed like that's what was happening, that there was heavy equipment was being attacked. And you could hear it. It was reverberating, all over the place because it was hitting so loud that you could hear it. They're known for their hitting things and having it echo.
Uh-huh.
And then there was one night, and this is the odd part, okay? This is the incident that I found very odd. There was one night, and we had, I think there was like 5 adults there. My fiance, we were trying to work stuff out. He'd come over to help us. We were on the roof that day. We were trying to redo the roof, so we were shingling the roof. And then I had my brother and his girlfriend, and she was standing in the doorway to my RV, just sort of watching everybody. I don't know why, but I was walking my dogs, you know, out towards the tree line, on one side of the acre, and I was, you know, walking them. I felt safe. There was a lot of people around, and my dogs, I figured, would let me know if anything was out there. And I was walking my two dogs, and I had a little pit bull and a pit bull mix. And this pit bull mix, this female dog that I had, was absolutely fearless. And I know everybody says that, but I'm not kidding you when I say she was fearless. She was like Old Yeller to me. I mean, she reminded me of Old Yeller. So she was an amazing dog. And so I was walking them, and, you know, and I always pay close attention to their body movements and their behavior, because animals will let you know when stuff's happening. They will let you know. If you don't already know, they will let you know. So they were being calm, nothing out of the ordinary. Next thing I know, this lady comes up to me. My brother's girlfriend comes up to me saying, hey, weren't you just over there on the other side of the acre? Were you standing over there by that tree line, by the fence? And I'm like, no, I was on the other side of the acre walking the dogs. She said, you weren't over there? And I said, no. So then she started asking every single person, was that you over there standing by the tree? And none of us were. So we kept saying, why? Why do you ask that? Because she was kind of spooked. She was freaked out. She said somebody was over there by that tree, and they turned around and left. I said, what do you mean somebody was over there? A person? She said, I don't know. It was a big person. Big person. And they were tall. And I said, okay. Can you describe what they look like? She kind of got a little fumbled on that one. I don't think she wanted to say, because she didn't think that we would believe her, maybe.
Yeah.
So, so the next thing I know, she tells my fiance at the time, you know, to go over there. And here's where my memory gets a little crazy, because I don't know if it was that night or the following day that she said this. And he kind of went over there to do a reenactment for her. I'm thinking it was the same night, though. And so he went over there, and because she wanted to see height-wise if he measured up to the figure she'd seen standing there in the tree line, which wasn't really a heavily wooded tree line. It was more closer to a field than the other side.
Yeah.
And so he went over there, and he was like 6'1". And she said, well, that's where he was standing, but it was much, much taller than you. Much taller than you. And he's like, taller than me? Like that much? She's saying, yeah, he was a couple feet taller than you. And so we're all looking at each other, and I started connecting the dots when she was saying that. But it didn't make sense because none of us felt anything. We didn't smell anything. We didn't hear anything. We didn't see anything. And the dogs, this is the thing that got me the most concerned. The dogs didn't react in any way, shape, or form. None of them.
Right.
None of them were acting unusual. And to me, that's really weird. So apparently, when she spotted it and she started really honing in and looking at it, it turned and just casually walked off and disappeared.
Right.
It just disappeared. And so, you know, she was getting my fiance to reenact the way it moved, and he played the part. He played right into it, as I think he knew what she was getting at. And he's a non-believer, but he was humoring her.
Right.
So after all that was over, and he went back to his place, and my brother and me and her went in, And we started flipping through a magazine. My brother had seen an advertisement in a magazine. There's an outfit that were locally advertising for anybody with stories about local Bigfoots. They were Bigfoot hunters, and they were advertising for, and they had a picture, a little drawing, a sketch of I guess it was a Bigfoot. It didn't look like a Mayaca one, but it looked more like just, I don't know, something from like the Boggy Creek creature.
Right.
And she said, that's it. Her eyes got huge. She got really kind of weird. She's like, that's exactly what I saw. And I said, excuse me, you saw this standing over there by the tree, right over there by that field and the gate and the tree? She's like, yes. And I'm like, and that dumbfounded me. Why didn't any of us see it, smell it, hear it, and most importantly, why did the dogs not react? So then, the next day, in the morning, I took my dogs out, and they wanted to go investigate that area. So we walked over that way, and none of the dogs that were there, my dogs, and even my very dominant alpha female that I told you was like Old Yeller, she was dominant enough to where if she smelled any other dog or any other animal, she had a high prey drive. She would try to attack other animals. She would mark territory like a male dog. She was that much of an alpha dog. And
Right.
that's a whole nother story in itself, because she was different than a lot of dogs. So anyway, she would not move her body close to the bushes, but she was stretching out her neck to smell the bushes without getting near it. And I found that extremely weird, because if she'd smelt another creature or another dog, she'd be all over that bush, sniffing it, marking it, looking around, where's it at? I'm going to go after it. Instead, she would not get physically close to it, and she was gingerly sniffing at it. And my other dog was gingerly sniffing at it. And then we started to try to walk down we had a little footpath that led to the acre behind us and on back, and they wouldn't go. They didn't want to walk down there. So, weird. That was weird, because I couldn't understand why it would be standing out there and nobody knew. And we were all right there.
Well, I think that they are very stealthy. I think that also they are smart, because they have to survive. They have to hunt. So I think they play the wind. They know the direction of the wind. If the wind is blowing from one direction to the other direction, they would, if they were wanting to watch you, they would make sure that they go in the direction that is upwind to view you. You know what I'm saying? These things are not stupid, and so therefore the dogs might not necessarily sense them, and also sometimes I think that the animals or people, think when you get those sense that something is around, I think sometimes too there's something going on, this infrasound, because when these creatures are in the area, a lot of times it's reported that there is no sound. Now, why would bugs stop? You know what I'm saying?
I know.
So you have to at least try and comprehend that there would be some reason why the bugs might quit, and I believe it has to do with infrasound. I think that for them to hunt, I think that they sometimes are able to quiet an area down. This maybe species specific. I mean, that's just a theory, but if they're going to hunt a certain species, they know it's in the area. They might emit an infrasound that quiets everything, and therefore even the thing that they're hunting would know it's there. But then they're going to be thinking, okay, now it's on. I'm hunting you. See if you can get away. But they also seem to have an ability with this infrasound similar to like what we were talking about earlier. Um, if you were to compare it, because sometimes when you talk about something that's on the supernatural end of the spectrum, some people think no, because they have been seen eating, hunting, and things like that. But angels in the scriptures ate.
Mhm.
So, and they wrestled with people. So I don't know whenever it was that people thought that angels or a supernatural being was not physical. And I'm not saying that the Bigfoot is supernatural, but I think that there's aspects of it that are supernatural, because I think that it's possibly a hybrid between a human and something else, which was supernatural. And that would, fall within the Genesis 6 story where the sons of God came unto
Right.
that kind of thing. And they corrupted other
Right.
flesh too. So you have these dogmen, you have all different kinds of cryptids out there. But if you had a dad, you might have some characteristics of your dad. If you have a mother, you might have some characteristics of your mother. So, when you have creatures that look all different kinds of ways, and they seem to have abilities that like in the Ezekiel, where it talks about Lucifer's pipes and timbrels, they're wonderfully and fearfully made, and it describes his vocal cord system that has some very fantastic ability to make sound that is beyond anything that a human being could even comprehend, because he was a covering cherub that was basically the cherubs that go back and forth before the throne. They sing continually, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So they would have some singing abilities, or you wouldn't be, in that particular job description. But
Yeah.
but I even talked a few times about when in Genesis there was a cherub. It says placed to guard the way to the tree of life, after Adam and Eve was cast out of the Garden of Eden. Okay, but it said there was a cherubim with a flaming sword, or no, not with. I always mess that up. It says a cherubim and a flaming sword. So a lot of when you think of it, you usually think of a cherub holding a sword, but it's not. That's not that at all. The scripture says a cherub and a flaming sword. So this flaming sword in the Hebrew actually is enchantment. So it's something that is audible. And then when you compare all throughout the scriptures, when these chariots and chariots of fire and different stories where the angels smote someone or an entire army or something like that. Sometimes they smote them with the spirit of fear, or or a spirit of weariness, so that they couldn't hardly move or something, or madness. Uh, there are just so many different things. Blindness. The Syrian army was smote, and they were abducted, and the whole army was taken to the next town. And Elijah was the one that took them there, and they didn't even remember how they got there. So it fits some of these things. It seems like there's an ability with sound, which I think that our military has been honing in on, to do things to people. You can smite. The scripture said that Israel was supposed to be able to go take the land that was before them, and they weren't even supposed to even get into battles. The Bible says that God would smite them with the spirit of fear and make them leave. They would just go in and possess the land. But they didn't follow the directions exactly. That's one
They
of the
were
reasons
afraid.
that was one of the reasons they ended up having to have these battles, because some people were like, well, this God was so cruel and this and that. And of course they don't understand that sometimes there was things in the land that were very evil and needed to be wiped out. And that's just if you believe it or not, that's up to you. But
Yeah.
there was a plan, in the very beginning, when they were supposed to go to the Canaan land, that they were God was going to have hornets drive them out. He was going to smite them with the spirit of fear, all kinds of different things. So I think that's an he was going to send the angelic host, kind of like at the when you think about the walls of Jericho, when there was someone that rode up on the horse and who was it? Joshua. He said, "Who are you for? Are you with us or them?" And he said, "I am the captain of the Lord's army." Basically,
Jesus.
this guy was
Jesus.
yeah. Are you kidding me? The captain of God's army. Wow.
Yeah.
And they, were given instruction to march around and then blow those horns. And some people think, well, maybe it was the horns that brought the wall down. No, I think it was the angelic host that gave out some type of sound that was able to break the walls, crumble them, knock the mortar out or whatever. And, so the infrasound issues that we keep having, I have one story that someone sent me from Texas, and I interviewed the lady. Her husband got hit with a growl or a growl or a howl or whatever you'd want to call it, and it made him fall asleep. They're in danger, and she's thinking she went and she was already in the truck, and he was coming to the truck. He got hit with the growl or the howl like 3 times. He got in the truck and he's like, I'm so tired, I cannot stay awake. And he went to sleep for like 30 minutes, and then he woke up and he was apologetic about it, saying, "I'm sorry, but I couldn't stay awake, man." And so it's just unbelievable some of the different things we hear about when people get growled at. It almost puts them in hypnosis states, all kinds of things. So you have some very fascinating stories. And when you're trying to figure these things out, sometimes I think you got to consider what was going on that you could not hear. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, there was a lot of activity that night. Everybody was kind of doing their own thing, and I can't remember what everybody else was doing. I just know that I was taking my dogs out by the tree line to relieve themselves before, time to go in or whatever. And it was dark out. It was late already. It was, 9:30. And my daughter was out there running around with 2 of her friends that were going to sleep over. And right. I don't remember what everybody was doing.
When you were talking about the monkey, you said it sounded like a bunch of monkeys going on.
Yeah.
There was a guy that contacted me, and I actually called him, and he was from Florida. And he said it was right. It was after the one of the hurricane episodes down there. So he didn't know what to think about it. He said he was driving down the road. He had his window down and stuff, and he heard from the woods. He said it sounded like you were at the zoo. He said it was all kinds of monkey sounds, and he didn't know if a bunch of monkeys escaped or what it was, but he was asking me, what I thought about it, and I told him, I don't know for sure because I can only guess, but I've heard that so many times. It's very possible that it was a bunch of these creatures out there making noise,
Well, I gotta say though, that being said, it's also very possible it actually could have been monkeys.
Yes.
Because Florida has a big number of rhesus macaques living in the woods, especially around the Ocala National Forest region. And it's not unusual for them to venture a little further out than that. And when my brother was telling me about the monkeys, and I heard some of it myself, I really assumed that it was the macaques. I really did, but yet at the same token, I don't know, it just seemed awfully loud and just, I never investigated it. I kind of looked up in the trees, didn't see much, but it was a lot of trees, so I didn't try to, flash lights and everything. But we do have macaques, so it could have been them, and it could have been the other things. I do know for a fact the odd bird sounds weren't right. They weren't birds.
Yeah.
I don't know what or they were, but they weren't birds. None of the birds that I ever heard of anyway.
Yeah, I mean, the whole Bigfoot phenomenon is known to have mimicking of wildlife, and sometimes it'll be a mimic of a whistle of a bird, and it, it's them communicating, kind of trying to be stealthy about it, and sometimes in places where these monkeys could not live and survive year round, people do hear these. It sound like a lot of monkeys going off.
Yep.
So, but in Florida, after a hurricane, it could have been possible, like you said, that monkeys got loose, or like you said, that monkeys could live in the woods. So it's hard. I told him I didn't know. I said, but it is possible that it was, the Bigfoot stuff going on there, because they do make that kind of sound, because there is an ape.
It really. I would question what part of Florida he heard that.
I can't remember now. I was going to interview him, and it just wasn't enough. Other than he would have came on and said just that. I heard some monkey sounds, and so it would have been about a 1 minute, 2 minute interview.
Okay.
But I should have grabbed it anyway and rendered it into a file and saved it for something like this. So but I've learned since I've started doing this. I should have got that, and then I could have said, like right now, why don't we listen to this? You know what I'm saying, and I could play that.
Yeah,
that would have been.
He actually sent you the sounds, or
no, but it would have been nice to hear him tell that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, especially for where it was.
Right. Yeah, and that would help verify what you're saying that happened, and because over time, all these interviews, that when you start gathering and collecting these stories, you start gathering a big picture, and it's quite incredible. I didn't really think about it that deeply, but over time, it's kind of like it just, so much information has come in of so many different things. It's incredible that you can kind of start connecting the dots here and there, and that way you can come up with theories, and that's basically what we have, is theories, and I think we do have some evidence for sure, and people are collecting evidence every day, and the more people that come forward like you, the better it is because this is evidence. Witness testimony is considered in court to be valid.
Yes.
You can go to a courtroom and you can give your testimony, and it counts in a court. So it should count when it comes to this topic, and for most people it does, because that's what convinced me that the Dogman thing was true and the Bigfoot thing was true. Of course, I kind of knew a little bit about the Bigfoot thing because I've had a couple situations of my own, and my sister had saw one straight out, very clearly, walk across the road one time, and I know my sister, she wouldn't just say that, what I'm saying. But there's a lot of times I've been camping, and now that I've collected so many stories, with the things that were thrown at me, and it seemed like 10 trees fell over within 10 minutes. And I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of trees falling over, and a lot of big, huge limbs breaking, and and darn, there's a lot of stuff falling in the water, and
yeah, it's kind of weird.
I mean, you try to, I've told it a few times that, like, when I was a kid, one time I was running around in the cornfield when I lived in Fort Wayne, Columbia City, Indiana, and I ran into a perfect circle. I was like, wow, man, a tornado touched down right here, and it made a perfect circle. And then I went through the corn and ran into another one. Just like 4 or 5 feet more, bam, there's another perfect circle. And it wasn't until I was older that I thought, darn, that was a crop circle in the corner
Crop circle.
right by my house when I was a kid. You know.
Oh, wow.
So
I wonder
maybe,
if you were on In Search of.
well, I tell you what, I remember one time where I had a fever, and I remember floating out of my body up to the window, and I thought, wow, that's weird that I was able to do that because of this fever. And you know, just little things like that, it kind of makes you think back and think, well, maybe there was something going on. You know, and I've told a few of my stories, and most of the people that subscribe to my channel have heard like my Darrow story and the story from when I was 5 and stuff like that. But you connect the dots from different little things that's happened. The more information you collect, you know, because you kind of know more, and that way can you can figure a little bit more of these kind of things out. That's just the best way I can explain it. But
Right.
you've had some fascinating stuff to share, and I think that we should maybe have you back, and we should talk about some of the other things that you were speaking about,
Okay.
that have to do more on the supernatural side. Would you be willing to do that?
Sure.
All right. And this will probably be cut in half and made into 2 episodes, because it may end up going over the amount for one on the size of the file and what have you.
Okay.
But thank you, Jill, for sharing.
Okay.
I really appreciate it.
Okay. Do you have more time at all, or would you rather cut it off now?
No, if you've got a little more to share, that's fine. You can
A
go
little
ahead.
bit.
Okay.
I do have a little bit more. Actually, I have a lot more if I really want to tell you everything, but boy, that could really drag on. But there's just a couple other points that I would kind of like to make. One in regards to what another park ranger saw that he couldn't identify, and he doesn't believe in any of the cryptids or any of that. But he lives in a residential area too, and it's a little more heavily inhabited than some of the other places I've told you about. It is a very popular, highly populated area. There's a Walmart down the street and everything. However, there are little tiny patches of woods where there are lots that have not been developed in there. And on the backside of that whole area, there is a wildlife management area that somehow connects to the Ocala National Forest. Somehow. I'm not sure how, but it does. And there's a power line, and he made comment that animals run the power line. Now, given where this place is and how populated it is, it's very weird, but they have actually seen bear and little things like that there.
Right.
And he said that he went out his house one evening, and it was still daylight out. It was evening, and something was walking around his car in his driveway, I think trying to attack his cat. And he saw it, and when it saw him, it bolted and started running back towards the power lines to cut through to get back to the conservation area. I'm not 100% sure how far away that was, but this is what he described to me that he saw, and he did not want to tell me what he saw because he did not think I would believe him, and he felt strange saying it, but he said that if he didn't know better, and these were his words, if he didn't know better, he'd swear it was a hyena, a big hyena. It was running on 4 legs. He said it had stripes on the hindquarters, and I said, did you see the head? He said, no, it was looking away from me, and it wouldn't look at me after I spotted it and scared it off. But its hindquarters were significantly higher than the front, and it looked like a hyena.
You mean the front was higher than the hind quarters?
No, the hind leg. Well, the way he said it, it was the other way around. But he still described it as a hyena. with
Yeah.
stripes and everything.
Well, yeah, the hyena basically has a higher front end on it.
Yeah, so that's true.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I don't know why
Yeah.
he must have got it backwards. But
Yeah,
he did say hyena. He said if I didn't know better, it was like a hyena.
Yeah.
Or maybe he did say the other way around and I don't remember it right. But if you really look at some of the descriptions that people have described the Dogman as being,
Yeah.
they describe it looking like a hyena when it's on all fours.
Yeah. Even sometimes standing up, they say that has the hyena looking snout on it. So
True.
yeah, that's I completely believe that, and of course he'd be reluctant to share that.
Yeah,
but that is the number one thing when it's on all fours. To look for is if there's a huge difference in the back and the front height.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
and the stripes
he
on the
may
leg.
have got it backwards when he's sometimes when people explain stuff to you, they get it kind of back. You got to read in, you know what I'm saying? You kind of got to use some common sense, and people get nervous when they're trying to tell you because they're afraid you're not going to believe and things like that. But,
He didn't want to tell me, and I kept telling him, try me, just try me, because he knows what I believe in, and, I don't know why he would be reluctant to tell me of all people, because he knows I believe in cryptids, he doesn't. But the odd part about that is there's another lady I know that lives in his neighborhood, in his general neighborhood, in that community. She had chickens that she raised outside, and she had a little chicken coop that you had to latch, with hands. So you had to be able to close it with your hands. She said somebody let their dog in, and all her chickens and rooster were killed. Not eaten, just killed. And there were feathers everywhere, and they were just killed. And she saw dog prints. And she said they were pretty good, her words, they were pretty decent-sized dog, and she's trying to figure out who in her neighborhood would be that heartless, because she said that everybody likes her chickens, and that she did see some dogs roaming around, but she's not sure that that's them. And I'm thinking, oh, wow. I don't want to jump to conclusions, but, when I'm hearing other things in that neighborhood like that, it makes me kind of wonder what else is going to be able to open a latch. It kind of makes more sense to me that it'd be something like a dog man rather than a person walking their dog, opening the latch to let their dog in just to kill the chickens, but the dog didn't do anything with the chickens, just killed them and then came out, and the man latched the latch behind them.
So there was none of the chickens missing?
No, they just were all killed.
So so the dog prints were inside the cage?
She said around the area. I don't know what her coop, I don't know if she has dirt floor for her coop. I think she does. But she did see dog prints, and she said they're really good size.
Right.
So I don't know. I hadn't seen them myself. And she's assuming, she's trying to piece together what could have happened. But she did say it had to have been a person unlatch the coop, let the dog in. The dog killed all the chickens, didn't do anything else but just killed them, and the man was able to take the dog out. And, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, that could be, but when a dog's in that mindset, it's a predator-prey thing. It's going to do more damage than what she described, but yet at the same time, if an owner just let the dog in just to kill the chickens for what reason, we don't know. But then calling the dog out after the dog's in that mindset would be very hard. There would have been some noise.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Did you say if the chicken coop was closed and latched back?
Yeah, except for the bottom. There's 2 latches in the bottom. So she surmised that somehow a dog was able to squeeze through, or somebody unlatched the top one. And I'm thinking, it could be that they unlatched both and forgot to latch the bottom one. but they latch the top one behind them. It doesn't, it could be the dog theory, what she said, but in my mind, knowing what I know about dogs, I would find it harder to believe that. Because, number one, who's going to want to do that? Who's going to want to bring a dog over there specifically to kill her chickens, risking the possibility that somebody's going to hear something and wake up, and then, they're going to have a problem getting the dog out in the process if somebody was to wake up and come outside in the process of that. And then how are they going to tear their dog away from being, in that mindset? Because when a dog's in that mindset, it's a killer. And it's kind of like they go in some sort of a daze.
All right. Well, the only way that would be possible would be if someone went over there because they didn't like them having the chickens, maybe because the chickens were noisy, like in the morning, especially.
Yeah.
Rooster,
But she can't think of a single person.
Right. So the dog maybe came with the person that came and killed the chickens, and the dog didn't do it at all. That would be the only feasible scenario. Or if there was other dogman reports in the area, then it would have took an opposable thumb to open the latches and close the latches back up.
That's why I thought it was significant, because the other person that was the ranger told me that he had seen that hyena-like creature in his yard chasing his cat, and he was in that same vicinity.
Yeah, that makes sense for sure.
That's why
they're known for killing chickens. That's not the first time I've heard of chickens being killed.
and they don't always eat that stuff.
Right.
So sometimes they want to kill just for sport.
Yeah.
Because they kill.
Yeah, and the Bigfoot seems to do that sometimes too. And when you report that, some people get mad. I'm just like, well, Bigfoot wouldn't do that, and because it's like just the head's twisted, especially dogs, because they're yappy. The Bigfoot don't like to be given away. Well, you got a yappy dog, he's done with. If you got Bigfoot around, might as well forget it.
Well, and then now that you mentioned that, there was a story that somebody told me way out in Levy County. There was a lady she had bought a lot of property, and this was in the vicinity where I had my encounter. In fact, my encounter was literally just a few yards down the road from this lady's original property. And there was a tale that somebody told me, local, that told me that this lady originally moved in, and she was trying to put up a kennel. She was wanting to be a boarding kennel back there for dogs and I guess cats. She had lots and lots of cats. And she was living in a little RV on the property like me, like I was on mine, while this was being built. And the people that were building it, the crew that she hired to build it, were staying there at night in tents. And they were reporting hearing all these weird noises. And she had, like I mentioned, she had a lot of cats. And slowly but surely, they kept finding these cats beheaded. Something was absolutely destroying her cats and beheading them. And they were finding them strewn about the property in the woods and everywhere else. So I don't know what the eventual outcome was. I don't know if she ever built anything back there or not. I never went back to look because it kind of creeped me out. But it was just in the same exact, like I said, vicinity that I had my account anyway. And I was told that story by somebody. and there were caves back there, way in the back. There were caves all through that area. So that, gives credence to the possibility that it could have been any type of cryptid that did that.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I think the dogman would love an area with caves because they tend to like to den, you know what I mean? And
yeah.
So,
well, at the time, I had no idea that there was really any such animal. I mean, of course we all heard of werewolves, and And I always wondered, but I never really thought there was. I never thought about it. My focus was completely on the Bigfoot type creature, and so anything that was told to me that happened, I automatically figured it was Bigfoot, including my own encounter. Because to this day, now that I know that there is a Dogman, I really don't know if it was a Bigfoot or a Dogman that actually I had my encounter with. I don't know, because I didn't see it and I didn't want to. I was so terrified I didn't dare look out that window.
Right.
And I had another friend, and this is what I wanted to touch on too. I wanted to ask. It's strange. I had two circumstances where two different people made fun of me and laughed and said the same exact words. They said, "I believe that you believe." The first person I told you about already he had an encounter of his own afterwards, and he was made to apologize. That happened again with a different person, and he used the same exact words. "I believe that you believe."
Right.
And I looked at him and my eyes opened wide. I said, "You don't want to say that to me. Please don't say that to me." And he said, "It's true. I believe that you believe, but I don't believe in it because I'm a hunter and I've been in the woods all my life and da-da-da-da-da." And within the same week, the same as the last person that said it, within the same week, he was out in the woods, again, Ocala National Forest, one of those little communities back there. And he was in hunting, and I don't know what time of year it was. He hunted everything. He hunted bow. He hunted from dove season all the way through the end of the season. He lived to hunt. That was his time of year. He planned his whole life around taking time off from his business that he owned to be able to go hunt every single day. And that's what he lived for. So he was out there, and this is why he said, "There's nothing out there. I would have known by now. So I believe that you believe, but I don't believe." And so he was hunting just a couple days after he told me that. He was out there, and he said something. He heard something come crashing through the bush, and he was terrified. He said he was so afraid, he was afraid to breathe. And he hunkered down under bushes because there was no place for him to go. He hid literally under the bushes. He said he peed his pants and he was afraid to even breathe. And he didn't move, he said, for like 4 hours. And he had no idea when it left, but he said that wasn't a bear. That was nothing that I have ever encountered in the woods. I didn't see it, but I felt it, I heard it, and there was no noise around me. Nothing else was making noise at all. He said it was very weird, and I've never been so scared. And after that, he made every excuse in the book to not have to go hunt again by himself.
Yeah, it's not the first time I've heard of that happening.
But I think it's strange that he said the same words that the other person said, "I believe that you believe." Yeah. And then within that week, he was having his own encounter and had to basically eat his words. And his girlfriend made him tell me, because she was, at the time, she was my best friend. She made him tell me what he encountered because he had said that and made fun of me.
Yeah. Well, sometimes people know you good enough to know that you're not lying. You believe what you're saying, but it's just so hard to accept, and I get that. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard to accept some things, especially if you just not ever thought about these type things before, so it was good that he didn't say you're a liar. I believe that you believe that, at least he was saying that I don't think you're lying. And then unfortunately or fortunately, whatever way you want to look at it, he had his own encounter. But anyway, we're coming up on an hour and a half on this, plus the last thing. I think we probably better cut this so I can make 2 episodes. And if you've got more stuff to share, we can certainly have you come back and we'll mix whatever else you got with some of the things that we had talked about on before we had started recording. and some of the
Mhm.
other on the supernatural end of the stuff on the spectrum, because I really need to start bringing a few more of those type stories forward, because I have some fans that like that type of thing, and if you'd be willing to do that, I would be willing to have you come back.
Yeah, I will. Some
And
of it's a little scary, but yeah, I definitely will.
yeah, and sometimes it's better to kind of separate the topics, you know, I mean,
Yeah.
so that the people that like the Bigfoot Dogman, things like that, you're not, scaring those off, those people off, because but
Yeah. Yeah.
but maybe next week or something, if you want to, you can come talk. I think you told me when you were able to, and but we'll talk about that on the side. So anyway, I
Okay.
really appreciate you, Jill.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I it's refreshing to be able to kind of air it all out.
Yeah, and I can tell. So I'm just really appreciative that you were willing to let me be the one to cover your stories and what have you. That's an honor to do that, and I'm thankful, because I would not have a show if it wasn't for people like you that are willing to trust me to tell or to cover your stories and let you tell your stories on this show and channel, whatever you want to call it. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And all you out there in YouTube land, thank you very much for watching. If anyone has a story out there of Bigfoot, Dogman, any kind of cryptid, or any supernatural something or another, anything that you think might be interesting that's in the mystery genre, you can contact me at brentonson@gmail.com. Thank you for watching. God bless, and bye-bye.